Hello everyone, welcome to Vijayata IAS Academy. This is Saurabh Sharma. Let's start with the current affairs of today, and we are going to talk about our first topic is wetlands. Why this is in news? Uh, because India has got two more sites added to the Ramsar list, and hence it has taken the total tally of wetland sites in the country, which is highest among the South Asian countries. So within this context, we have to look into this topic. So let's just look at the context. What does it say? It says that on World Wetlands Day, very important for you to remember that this February 2 is World Wetland Day, what international community is celebrating for the conservation of the important wetland sites as per the Ramsar Convention. February 2, actually on this day at Ramsar site in Iran, at Ramsar in Iran, the convention for the conservation of wetlands, which is an ecosystem, a unique ecosystem, and it is the only conservation program that is specifically targeting one particular ecosystem in the world. So this is very important for prelims, that on February 2 we celebrate, or we generally suggest World Wetlands Day and observe it. The Ramsar Convention on Wetlands designated Khijadia Bird Sanctuary near Jamnagar, of course it's in Gujarat, and Bakhira Wildlife Sanctuary in UP as wetlands of international importance. So these two words are important because Khijadia and Bakhira. So since we have got one more wetland in UP, so it is taking the UP tally as highest. Almost 10 wetlands are there under Ramsar sites in UP. So this is important that UP has the highest number of wetlands in the country. Right now, what is the Ramsar Convention? Let's just take a look, because let's just understand from this picture what word says, and then we'll be moving our general convention, how we generally take up the topic, right? Because there is an analysis required in this aspect, because this is very important topic for your environment and biodiversity aspect, which is important for UPSC, right? And this wetlands is not only having relevance in the environmental aspect, however, disaster it is also linked to, because in 2020 mains there was this question on the case study of Hyderabad or Hyderabad and Bangalore wetlands, that how the floods in Hyderabad could have been saved because of the absence of wetlands. Those are actually wetlands, those are actually working as natural sponge for absorbing the excessive amount of water from the city. Hence it relieves the city from the waterlogging, floods, and other kind of chokings in the sewage system or other kind of gutter system in the city, which is working as an important component for the water movement when it comes to the water logging, anti-water logging activities, right? Yeah. So Ramsar Convention on Wetlands defines wetlands as area of marsh, fen, peatland of water or water, whether natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, fresh, brackish or salt, including areas of marine water, the depth of which at low tide, very important, because here UPSC might play with your emotions by putting the word high tide, right? So it is always the low tide, because high, we do not know what high it could be, but we know that up to this level minimum we need, that the level of water should not exceed 6 meters at the low tide zone, right? So it should be 6 meters at the low tide zone. So hence this is actually, and these words are important while you are, if you are writing a contextual definition of wetlands while starting any question which is coming in this context, right? However, the Indian government's definition of wetland excludes river channels, paddy fields, and other areas because they are involved in the commercial activity that takes place. And river has a different mechanism. River is basically a stream, it's not wetland. Wetland has one definite area with very little changes in the boundary externally or internally. This is basically the wetland. And what rivers do, or rivers actually flows in the ways of a stream. So hence it is not a wetland, it's a river channel, right? Okay. Now, it's nothing just to take look into. And now if we talk about that, it was signed on, just a second, whatever I'm erasing, before erasing I have already given you time, so please go through those words because this is important and they will make important component of your answers. Wetlands Ramsar site, it was signed on 2 February 1971. The year is very important because it is generally asked. At the Iranian city of Ramsar, located on the shores of the Caspian Sea. Important. So it is not Black Sea, it is not Sea of Azov or whatsoever, or Baltic Sea. It is actually Caspian Sea. So important. The date is celebrated as World Wetland Day because it was signed on 2nd of February. And why Caspian Sea? Actually, Caspian Sea has the Tariq. This is the formula I told you while we were discussing the Central Asian region. So this is your duty to find out that which all countries are actually surrounding the coastal boundaries of Caspian Sea, right? And Iran is one of them. Now, since it is more or less has the just to read about the topics, right? So we have to move beyond this, and I am just seeing that if I have to give you some kind of important points from your prelims perspective, right? So let's say Ramsar Convention is not only for the wetlands which are all into the country or inside the country. It can be for the countries if two countries are sharing one water body. For example, India, because like here it's Pangong Lake, which is the world's highest salt lake, right? So here it is a convention going on that this water body can also be declared as Ramsar site. So that will be the first trans-Asian or trans-boundary Asian wetland in Asia if it is declared as a wetland, because it's 1/3 is lying in India and another 2/3 is lying in China, right? So transboundary wetlands is also possible, right? Next, it is the convention includes various measures to respond to threats to the ecological character of sites. The world's largest protected wetland is Llano de Moxo. Llano de Moxo. So it is located in Bolivia, right? So this is important. You have to just keep that in mind, because if UPSC is not asking, other state PSCs actually might ask this question. The Congo Basin. Congo, it's in Central Africa. All right. The Congo Basin, one of the largest freshwater bodies in the world, is now home to the largest transboundary Ramsar site in the world. Right? So one of the largest freshwater bodies in the Ramsar site, right? Now in India, it was becoming, or India became a contracting party in October 1981, and it designated two very important, Chilka Lake, Odisha, and Keoladev National Park in Rajasthan as its first two Ramsar site. Very important, right? That Chilka in Odisha and Keoladev in Rajasthan became two very first Ramsar site in India. And now India has 49 designated Ramsar sites, after we have one in Gujarat and another one in UP, newly added wetland sites in the country. So the total tally has been taken to 49, which is actually present in or spreading across 18 states and 2 union territories. That is the largest network of Ramsar sites in South Asia. So India is now the largest Ramsar sites network in South Asian countries, right? So we have in 18 states and 2 union territories. This number is also important for prelims, that how this 49 is actually distributed among the different states and union territories in India. So these 49 sites, as I said earlier, 10 are in UP, which is maximum, 6 in Punjab, 4 each in Gujarat, Jammu and Kashmir. It is now union territory, Jammu and Kashmir, after the State Reorganization Act of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. 3 each in Himachal Pradesh and Kerala, 2 each in Haryana and Maharashtra, Odisha, West Bengal, Rajasthan, and 1 each in Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Ladakh, Manipur, Tamil Nadu, Tripura, Uttarakhand, and Madhya Pradesh, right? So now these are the names given. I would just suggest that please take a look so that you actually can locate the names with the Ramsar sites in whatever presence of the states it is being asked in, right? Next, now this is important, Montreux record under the Ramsar Convention. It is a register of wetland sites on the list of wetlands of international importance where changes in ecological characters have occurred. So it is kind of red list, right? Are occurring or are likely to occur as a result of technological developments, pollution, or other human interface. So Montreux record is important, right? The Montreux record was established by recommendations of the Conference of the Contracting Parties in 1919, and sites may be added and removed from the record only with the approval of the contracting parties in which they lie. So currently only 2 wetlands of India are in Montreux record, very important. The first one, Keoladev, which was the first to be added in 1981, right? And Rajasthan, Keoladev in Rajasthan and Loktak Lake in Manipur. These 2 are in the Montreux record since very long, right? So this Loktak Lake is in Manipur, which has the floating landmass. This is important because this was asked in UPSC in 2015. Right? Chilka Lake was placed in the record but was later removed from it due to the successful restoration of the site. So here the interchanging could be between Chilka Lake and either with Keoladev or the Loktak Lake, right? Now, what else is there in the topic? You just can go through it because it is more or less like a topic of discussion, right? So now if I just show you this map, so you can just take a look because it is very important when you are reading something about the sites. So it's but obvious that you have to look at the map and where these sites are actually present. So it is important wetlands, not the Ramsar sites. Ramsar sites are within it. So the list has been provided to you in the document. So your task is to locate those sites written in the list and locate those on the maps, because UPSC could be asking you that a blank map with some dots are given and they are asking that what these 2 or 3 dots are representing. So that's how the question might come, right? Now, what basic functions do these wetlands actually provide? So just forget about this North Carolina wetlands, because wetlands more or less provides the same function all around the world, right? So here, if we start about this flood and erosion control, wetlands give rainwater a place to go. They hold water from heavy rain events and help prevent flooding in nearby areas. Wetlands slow down soil erosion by slowing the speed of the water passing through. It's basically, just remember that wetlands work as the natural sponge for the excessive availability of water on the flatlands and probably the water logging system in the urban areas and surrounding the urban areas. So it is very important for the natural evacuation of water, right? And this reference especially, it was recently mentioned when it was the Hyderabad floods. It was a great elaborated story covered in the Hindu, and we discussed it, and it was written that since natural ecosystem around the cities have been hijacked, have been made just good to not next to bad conditions. So because of the cities discharges directly going there without any treatment, industrial water discharges going there, untreated water, the chemical what say that chemical quantity availability in the water is so high, and the local ecosystem is highly disturbed. The fishing perspective is also dead, and just because of the not cleaning of the wetland properly and making it a naturally suitable one for the natural ecosystem and other components involved in the natural ecosystem chain, or making that a normal biosphere within that system. So it is all discussed, and it is said that if this water body, what we call as wetland, which is present surrounding the city or nearby cities, it is working for the absorption, and it is working as the natural sponge. And sometimes when it is not working as the natural sponge, the water is basically seeping down to the underground, and it is helping in getting the stability of the water table. And ultimately we need water table at every place. Right now, clean water. Wetlands help clean the water that passes through them before it reaches streams, rivers, estuaries, and the ocean. And in North Carolina, many cities and towns get their drinking water from rivers. So, and even in India, because like this is no different from Carolina in USA, but it is similar like in India, because the water cleanliness system, it is naturally cleaned by the wetlands, and also the underground water. See, if you can see that the water is also seeping down to the underground regions, and the sediments are basically staying here, right? So it is a kind of natural cleaning system. Water supply. Wetlands slowly release water after filling up, continuing to provide water to surrounding areas in dry conditions, right? Nothing to discuss here. Food. Wetlands are a great source of food production, harvest of fish and shellfish. They rely on wetlands, produces $55 million that is there. But here in India also, the local fishing activities, the sightseeing activities, adventurous activities, and the provisions of fish availability, crabs availability, prawns availability within the local wetlands is also important for the community, which is dependent upon this local ecosystem, and not for commercial use but for the sustainable livelihood, or the dependence for the food in regular habits. Now, habitat. Wetlands are homes or habitats for a wider variety of plants, insects, amphibians, reptiles, fish, birds, and mammals. And in India, it is basically important for the migratory birds, because as you have seen that Siberian crane coming from Siberia, flying for thousands of miles, and they are taking a halt in the Chilka Lake region, or in the Kolleru Lake region for that matter, Sundarbans, because these wetlands are providing the apt natural environment to survive for these migratory birds who are taking the long flights around the globe, right? So if every single thing, or like all this multi-functions are provided by the wetlands through the wetlands system, ecosystem as a local ecosystem, so you can see that what importance do these natural water bodies hold. So that is why there is a specific convention for the restoration and protection of the wetlands, and this is the only convention provision for the one specific component of environment. And also the fun activities for local sightseeing, relax, hiking, camping, hunting, boating, fishing, and so many activities, right? So this is basically the in a nutshell the provisions of wetlands, what we have talked about, right? So now if we just talk about the analytical part, so if I tell you the analytical part of the, let's start with the urban wetlands. So the value of wetlands, especially in urban settings, is evidenced through our history absolutely since very long, because in southern India, if you have read history carefully, the Cholas, Hoysalas built tanks all over the state, right? Now, the multi-layered role, wetlands not only support high concentration of biodiversity but also offer a wide range of important resources and ecosystem services like food, water, fiber, groundwater, recharge, water purification, and flood moderation, storm protection, erosion control, soil erosion prevention, carbon storage, what not. These many functions are being provided as what we call the multi-layered roles provisions of the wetlands, right? Now, the it also helps in the cultural heritage and have deep connections with the city's ethos, because like the provisions of these, for example, Vembanad Lake is providing the cultural heritage part of Kerala. Chilka is providing the cultural heritage part of Odisha, earlier Kalinga. So that's how you can see and imagine the things, that how big or how deeply cultural ethos is also connected to the environment. And do not forget that all the natural components in India, in one form or the other, they are sacred for us and we worship them. In any religion you say, we are worshipping God through the natural elements. And in this manner, many sociologists have said that that religion, it's not about worshipping God, it's about worshipping society by the social members of society or social groups itself, right? Now, so if this is the important functions, or these many important functions are the provisions of what wetlands, and what are the issues with the wetlands, that why are we having this convention? So briefing summarily, if I'm saying you that the biggest problem and biggest threat for our wetlands is urbanization. Urbanization is not in exclusivity, but the unplanned urbanization, the mushrooming of cities in very unplanned manner, it is hurting the wetlands existence at very high stake, right? Because wetlands near urban centers are under increasing developmental pressures, right? Non-scientific processing of waters and discharges, residential, industrial and commercial facilities, they are using wetlands as dumping ground. Excess or availability of dumping grounds, if there is no fear of penalties and government provisions and laws for the protections of wetlands, then these wetlands are actually converted into picnic sightseeing, or probably farmhouses are being built, and like water houses and whatsoever, and builders might have sold them at the very high prices and earn a big profit, and then ultimately the flood will come and everything will be ground zero, and land is again available for the property dealers, right? Now, anthropogenic activities, see, the unplanned urban and agricultural development industries, road constructions, resource extractions from the underground regions, dredge disposals, wetlands have been drained and transformed, causing substantial economic and ecological losses in the long term. Absolutely undeniable fact, right? The If we talk about agricultural activities in the region of Haryana, Punjab, Western Uttar Pradesh, and Northern Rajasthan, the Green Revolution of 1970s, vast stretches of wetlands have been converted into paddy fields. In urban regions, it is basically a dumping ground, or the availability of the illegal encroachment of the land by many members of society or different stakeholders. But what happens in the rural areas, either they are converted into commercial activities of fish farming, or they are converted into the paddy fields, right? So ultimately the proper function of wetland is vulnerable and has been reduced to nil again, right? So these are the issues. Then the construction of canals, diversion of streams and rivers to transport water to lower arid regions for irrigation purposes and etc. They have degraded the qualities of wetlands in the region, and they have completely outturned the conditions, natural conditions, or which is required for the existence of wetlands and their natural upkeepness. So for example, like Vembanad Kole, Chilka Lake, Loktak Lake, they are actually severely impacted by dams that affect water and silt inflows into the wetlands, and therefore the depth of the water is basically reduced, and ultimately the entire local ecosystem is disturbed. Then one more important is deforestation, right? So removal of vegetation in the catchment area leads to soil erosion. As you know that the roots of the trees and plants is important to hold, or to keep holding the soil in the down roots region, and otherwise the soil will be eroded and the siltation will be an issue. Then pollution, unrestricted dumping of sewage and toxic chemicals, untreated waters and other chemical discharges in the water, they have polluted the fresh water availability in the wetlands like anything, and the fishes have been dying, right? and because of that we have some specific birds, they are also dying. So it is basically a kind of cyclic effect which is being passed on from one element to the another. Now introduced species that are alien in nature, so they are basically, Indian wetlands are threatened by the exotic introductions of plant species as water hyacinth, right, and salvinia. So these are basically the exotic the foreign breeds or the alien breeds that have actually disturbed the locally available ecosystem because of the changes in the adaptability and the system. And the ultimate is the climate change, there is no deniable. So increased air temperature or increased surrounding atmospheric temperature, shifts in precipitation patterns, precipitation means the rainfall pattern, increased frequency of storms, droughts, sudden floods, flash floods, increased atmospheric carbon dioxide volume presentation on concentration, and sea level rise could also, and it has definitely affected the quality of wetlands in India, right? So this is basically, and if we talk about some governmental flaws or some the issues in the conservation of wetlands, the regulatory bodies like Central Wetland Regulatory Authority, Central Wetland Regulatory Authority, they have been able to direct a very limited impact, right, as they are only having advisory power, no punishment related powers, no penalty imposing powers, authorities. It is nothing like that with them. So it is just an advisory body. So as you can see that there is nothing but advices are generally like to be accepted or to be denied. Hardly makes any difference, right? Then the other laws ignoring the participation of local communities, which is highly important. If local communities are given authorities, then because they have been staying there since ages and they know that if they are dependent, their livelihood is dependent on the proper functioning and existence of the natural ecosystem, then these people have been knowing that how to conserve the particular areas. And since they are not given any authorities and all the authorities and scope have been taken from them away, so how would you ensure their contribution towards the natural ecosystem preservation, right? Now the water demand, and because there is no significant water policy and there is no well defined natural urban water policy, so hence the urban water management rather being proven as a boon, it has provided a bane kind of condition for the wetlands existence, right? And lack of awareness, knowledge, interest of community and in the youth, and the scientific scope of availability of functioning into that, and like not telling students at school level or at different educational level the importance of the environment, and suddenly introducing the environment as a heavy subject for people who are preparing for UPSC, hardly going to make any difference, because once you are an officer you have to work according to the provisions and structure of the time and space, and you hardly have any kind of zeal towards environment specifically. But those people who are not in office or who are not member of any governmental jobs, but they are member of natural setup, environment, society first, so these people can come together and they can devote themselves for the natural upkeeping of the local environment and ecosystem conservation. So in this context, if we talk about that, what could be some solutions about the wetland issue we are discussing? So first is that a synergy with mega urban schemes should be developed or should be made. The ecosystem services of wetlands that needs to be highlighted, assessed, and their values must be brought in, and thus the policies should include and inculcate the value damages to the wetlands via the process of development, and then the provision of restoring back the damages and even adding more. Then only this change can also be brought in, that simultaneously with the development the wetlands and other ecosystem is being restored, right? So the cities like schemes like mega smart cities project, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, right, like Amrut. And so they need to have the components of wetlands or natural ecosystem as intrinsic part of the planning and approach. Then only the ecosystem will get the equal weightage in the development and planning aspects. And once they are in the planning part, the execution will there be, and it will be accountable. Right now, people's participation, as we have seen, right, the public comments must be invited before making any master plans, like what DDA did for the development of master plan 2041. The people's opinion was invited, right? And people actually very well, they understand because they live mostly nearby those setups, so they can provide. And hence they and based on the, if we talk about Delhi, the integrated network of green and blue assets of Delhi, that came up, the provision of green and blue assets came up, where the trees and water conservation was given the equal weightage by the time we would be reaching 2041. Otherwise we would be reaching 2041, but Delhi would have been converted into another Rajasthan Marusthal area, or the deep Marwar region like Jaisalmer and like Bikaner region, where water level have been reaching deeper, and now it is standing at 400 feet to 450 feet down the bottom. So by the time in 2041, what would be the water table level? You can imagine yourself, right? Now, similarly, like self-help groups, right, Swamini, for example, of 10 women have been organizing mangrove safari, right, for tourists in the Mandavi Creek in Maharashtra in 2017. So right, so the local people are finding the economic opportunities while conserving the ecosystem at the same time, right? So that could be a model for community led conservation, and for also simultaneously we can actually develop the prospects of ecotourism. So this Swamini self-help groups is very important because their case study of mangrove safari is important in the mangroves of Mandavi Creek in Maharashtra, right? Now, so the sustainable development goals, it also says that the environment is finding a great context and great point to be discussed, and we cannot close our eyes from this. So while accommodating the development, environment has to be considered on equal weightage. Otherwise the development will be there but without people, because poverty is an ingrained problem in countries like India, and without understanding the provisions and values of environment, local ecosystem, we are actually outrightly avoiding the great volume of poor people in the country. And hence the poverty can only be eradicated because natural ecosystem will provide so many provisions for jobs creations, like ecotourism, as we have seen in the Swamini group in Maharashtra, Mandavi Creek region. Also, it is providing the livelihood perspective. It is also providing the food availability and other resources availability for the local people. Otherwise, those provisions would be ended because government has limited scope and resources. So environment has to be an equal stakeholder within the provisions of development and all the policies, along with community development. So this is how we have to look among the, or for the conservation of wetlands and wetland conditions in the country. So I hope you understood the topic. Thank you so much.